Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first Liverpool FC Grounded Football, hosted by First 11. So welcome to my panel. We are one short this evening. We did expect Connor to be with us, but unfortunately he's not well. So if you have tuned in, Connor, get well soon, buddy, and we'll see you next week. In the meantime, I do have two other guests with me. So Doug, say hello to everybody and tell us, first of all, mate, where we can find you on your socials.
Hello, Steve. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, you can find me on my YouTube channel. It's the Dugout Football channel. My Twitter is right there, enroad_1992. I'm also on Instagram at Douglas.Horn, and I'm also on Facebook at Douglas James Horn. But I'm really looking forward to this, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure, mate. And Rack, tell us where we can find you, please.
I don't have YouTube or anything like that, but you can normally catch me on Football Terrace, sometimes on Twitter Spaces, usually like 2 o'clock in the morning or something crazy like that. And yeah, on Twitter in general, that's chatting about football. So yeah.
No worries. And big up to Rachel, who, and likewise, and big up to Rachel, who asked me to come and get involved on behalf of the First 11. So this is going to be a weekly show. We're going to talk about all things Liverpool. So games that have gone by, games that are happening, news that's coming on, news that imminent transfer windows, cup games, and all that type of stuff. So there'll be plenty to talk about. And I hope you two guys can be a fixture on this show because I do enjoy spending time in your company. So we'll start with a little bit of a conversation about the elephant in the room at the moment, which is the Euro 2020. Well, more importantly and more concerning, the reaction from England fans at the final whistle and before the game, with the sights we saw in and around Wembley Way and all the places where bottles were being thrown and litter was being left. And then the scenes at the stadium itself where they were rushing the security gates to try and get in. But I think both of those two things need to be put into perspective. The biggest issue that we've got is the racist abuse of the three guys that missed the penalties. We don't condone it. I firmly believe the government have called racist trolls today. They're not trolls; they're criminals, and they should be treated in that way, and they should be charged and prosecuted in that way. So, I'm speaking from on my own. These are my opinions, not the channel's opinions. I think racism is intolerable, and something needs to be done. I think social media platforms need to be regulated, where you have to put either your passports or your driver's license in, and you can't hide behind a VPN. Something has to be done. But fundamentally, I don't condone that. I think it's disgusting. You have a 19-year-old lad who took a penalty in a Euro Cup final. The 19-year-olds that are sat on the internet abusing him and need to have a long, hard look at themselves. That boy's accomplished and achieved something in his life and will go on to do many more great things, I'm sure. But it was disgusting, and I'm pretty sure you two guys agree. In fact, I know you do because we touched base before we went live. So coming away from that, and it's unfortunate we even needed to talk about that. Come to you, Rack. Personally speaking, I came into this as a Liverpool fan with very little time for international football. I think I've changed my mind because I think there's a freedom with international football that's not the same as club football, because it doesn't mean so much in terms of the revenue. It doesn't mean so much in terms of the business, and you play for the here and now. What's your thoughts on that?
I came into the tournament a little bit nonplussed. I would say I'm an England fan. I've been an England fan for many years, but I kind of felt, despite the fact that I felt a connection with the players, which I think historically I actually haven't felt. Just the style of football and the way that England have played, not just under Southgate necessarily, but going back, probably to under Hodgson, of course, and going back even further. I've just felt a bit disenfranchised, really, and in some ways, my opinion has changed in the sense that it was, I thought it was a great tournament. Even just watching it as a neutral, I thought the quality of football was good. Great players on show. England got to the final, which was good. But at the same time, I also feel like it was an opportunity missed, because if we look at Italy, for example, obviously Italy won. The transformation they've made to the whole philosophy behind the way that their national team plays in the space of 3 years after they missed out on the World Cup. I used to live in Italy, so I've got a lot of Italian friends who, yeah, been absolutely killing me on WhatsApp and stuff over the last 12, 24 hours. But making that kind of revolutionary change to the way that the England play would actually play into the strengths of our players, of our young players. And so, even though I say even though England got to the final, I still feel like there's a little bit of an opportunity missed. But there's still time. I think Gareth Southgate should take charge and move forward into the next World Cup, and and then see how things go. But we've got a good crop of great young players. 100% echo all the words you said about the horrible, shameful stuff that some of them have had to endure, and and just also in general, I thought the quality of the football was great. Great players on show, amazing football, and I kind of, even though some people don't like it, I kind of like the fact that it was spread across different cities and different countries as well. It kind of brought a bit of a different vibe to the whole thing.
Totally agree. So coming to you, Doug, and Rack makes an interesting point on Gareth Southgate leading England into the World Cup, the next World Cup. I know, obviously, you're a Scotsman, so it's quite good to get an impartial view, because to be honest with you, I thought Gareth Southgate was quite dour, and I thought that was reflected in his teams prior to this tournament, when he went to the fans and was giving it the old Klopp fist pumps and what have you. So I think he sort of endeared himself to the fans a little bit more. So in terms of Southgate, as a sort of a non-England fan, if you like, but one with more than a vested interest, sort of seeing it the way we do, what are your thoughts on Rack's suggestion that Southgate should continue?
I absolutely agree. I think he's actually made England fans dream and believe again. I think it's fantastic that England go to the final. Pains me to say, as a Scotsman, I mean, it's great that Scotland actually managed to qualify for a major tournament for the first time in 23 years. Yes, I wasn't too old to remember 1998. So that was always a good thing as well. But look, I think Gareth Southgate did a good job with the players that he had. I think they started slowly. in the group stage, and then as the tournament progressed on, they looked like they were getting clicking into the right areas as well. But what I will say is that this tournament has been very, very good. It started in Italy with Andrea Bocelli singing Nessun Dorma. It has ended with Italy winning the Euros. I just think that was a fantastic way to end. Obviously not for England fans, etc. But I think Italy, if you look back on the group stage and if you look back around the knockouts, I think Italy have probably been the team to beat. So probably you'd have to say that the best team won on this occasion.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. So that for me, I don't want to spend too much time on Euro 2020 because that's not what this show is about. But obviously, it's very topical. It's just finished, and we did need to address some concerning points. So, looking at the Reds going into sort of situation with our boys, just wanted to touch base with you on your thoughts on last season's story. So, I'll start with you this time, Doug. Obviously, we came out the back of a record-breaking season, and we were one win away from breaking the points haul and becoming Centurions. We could never imagine that what happened was going to happen in terms of the injuries, the situation we found ourselves in. I've not really spoken to you about this. I'm keen to hear from both of you. What are your thoughts on last season's events and how it unfolded, and how did you deal with that? Because it was hard. It was Liverpool were hard to watch at times, weren't they?
I think everyone, including me, was probably glad to see the back of the 2021 season. In honesty, I think it's unnatural territory to have 22 centre-back partnerships for that season, but that's exactly what happened. As soon as Van Dijk got injured, Gomez got injured, Matip got injured, and they were having to rely on Henderson, Fabinho at the back. But the one thing we can take away from that season is that, yes, the two draws against Newcastle and Leeds were the only black spots on the last 10 games, because we won 8 out of 10 games to get top 4. Look, I think we were very, very fortunate to get top 4. To come third was miracle in itself, because especially with the start to the season we had. But look, I think it's nice to get back to pre-season, and I am looking forward to the new season, and especially our newest recruit, and being Konate, him being at the same height as Virgil van Dijk. I think that's going to be very, very fun to watch. But yeah, I was very glad to see the back of 2021 season. But as I said, to get third was an absolute miracle.
I totally agree, and we've got a point to talk about transfers very shortly, so you get a bit more time to talk about Konate, both of you, and what your expectations of him are, and I've got a question for both of you, which will be interesting. But before we get to that, Rack, your thoughts on last season, and how, it was hard, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a funny one, because if you said at the start of the season Liverpool finished third, you say that's going to be a disappointing season. You would even arguably say it's going to be a crap season. Third, no trophies. But then, as the way that the kind of season panned out, and the way that the injuries occurred, and then the injuries upon injuries occurred, and then having to shoehorn players in, and everything that we had to deal with to come through it and get third in the final reckoning. I thought we did well, and yeah, it was disappointing. I mean, and look, rivalry aside, Chelsea won the Champions League and Man City won the Premier League, and I mean certainly Chelsea are the team that I have a lot of love for. So, and Big Airs is kind of like, at least in English terms, is our trophy. So, yeah, that was disappointing, but we live to fight another day, and so I look forward to this season with optimism, as I do every season, and we'll see how it goes next season.
Just staying with you, Rack, and thanks for that. Just a quick one. Obviously, when we lost Van Dijk and then we lost Gomez, I've sat on a number of pods, my own and other people's pods, and listened to Liverpool be torn to pieces by our own fans, or rather the less educated ones that choose to do it anyway. Do you believe? I do, and I just want to see if you can concur and agree that once we lost Van Dijk and we lost Gomez, we didn't have a system to play at all. We played off the cuff football. We lost our way. We lost our press. We lost our counter press. We lost what we do. We put square pegs in round holes. I genuinely believe the loss of the two main central defenders contributed to everything that we saw. Your thoughts on that? Would that be something you would agree with?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the base from which we play, and it's the springboard for all our attacks, and it's the rock upon which our defense is built, and it affected us massively. What was the thing is, we lost Van Dijk, and then we continued to do quite well up until the Crystal Palace game, I think it was. And I remember watching the Crystal Palace game and turning to a mate of mine and saying, "It's just amazing to be this good." And at that point, we were top of the league. We were clear. City, I think, were like 13th or something like that. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I drank the Kool-Aid and I bought into it. But then inevitably, then Gomez gets injured and Matip gets injured as well, and then it becomes very difficult. And it's only until we kind of started to re-establish a style of play, or at least the players that we brought into play at central defence, i.e. Phillips and Rhys Williams, they finally adapted, and that's when we started to see more of our original game. It wasn't to the same level. Some of the wins in that last 10 games was, obviously Ali needed to bloody save us against West Brom. But you started to see signs that we're getting back, and so that's why, yeah, hopefully this season we can continue where we left off.
So, a question for you: everybody's fit, everybody's available for selection. Last season, who would your midfield three have been?
My midfield: Fabinho, Thiago, and Fabinho. Yeah, it's difficult to say. I mean, Fabinho, Thiago, and Gini. Fabinho, Thiago, Henderson. One of those two. It depends. Yeah.
What about you, Doug?
I'm a fan of Henderson, but I also think he has some limitations as well. But he's a leader in our team and is a vitally important piece. So yeah, would have missed him if he's not there.
I would have said probably Fabinho, Gini, Hendo. I think we missed that last season. Is obviously Henderson had to play in the defense. Fabinho had to play in defense as well. So we didn't really have that spine in the the midfield. We kind of lost that defensive spine in the team. But obviously the stats don't lie. Is that we actually lost only one game in 2021. I think it was the Real Madrid game with Fabinho and DM. So you can actually see how crucial he has been for our season, especially being in defensive midfielder, which is obviously his role. But yeah, my midfield three would have been Fab, Gini, and Hendo.
I'm in agreement with you, and the reason why is I don't think we bought Thiago to play the amount of games he played. I think it was evident when we were under pressure. Thiago can't play on the stretch. He's not good running back towards his own goal. I think if everybody had been fit, I think Thiago would have come on to play last 20 minutes when we needed to take a game away from somebody, or when we're struggling against a low block. And depending on who we recruit this summer, it could be, for me, it could be the same again. I think we could see Thiago's game time limited. If you go back and look across his history, he's never played 30 games in a season. He doesn't have the physical attributes to do it. I think the recruitment of Gini's position is really crucial because it's a very physically demanding role. The reason why I don't go with Thiago in that role is because he can't do it. And it's a hard thing to do. And we'll talk about future signings. And I want to get your opinion on that midfield berth and who we bring in at some point. I do, before we move on, want to say big up to Ryan, who's got COVID. It obviously isn't affecting him that much because he's still dissing Liverpool players left, right, and centre. And this guy's supposed to be a Liverpool fan. So, good evening, Ryan. Can you keep it clean, please, mate? Like it was said before, we don't have Gomez slander on here, mate. We're Liverpool fans. We don't do that. So, hope you feel better soon, pal. Really do. So on to the next topic I want to talk about, which is transfers in. And this is interesting, guys, because we've got one. We're talking about others, so we'll start with Konate. And Doug, as you mentioned it before, I'll start with you. Thoughts on Konate and thoughts on how you see our defence lining up at the start of the season?
Well, I think we're all very excited to see what Mr. Konate can do. I think it was an absolute bargain to get him at £36 million. I'm actually looking forward to it, and I think our probably starting back four will probably be Robbo. I think Van Dijk. I think Konate might start on the bench though. I think you might see potentially Gomez come back in, and then obviously it'll be Trent. But it'll be so good to have that stable back four that we didn't have last season back, because I think not having Van Dijk did actually affect Robertson's performances and definitely Trent's performances, because Van Dijk likes to do those wide balls out to Robbo, likes to do those wide balls out to Trent. So I think we did miss Van Dijk in our defence badly, and I did think it affected Robbo and Trent's games.
Good shout. What about you, Rack? What do you think the four will be on the opening day of the season?
I mean, Virgil, Trent, and Rob are obviously a given, assuming they're fit. Gomez, I mean, apparently from what I understand, Gomez's injury was really, really serious. The ruptured patella tendon apparently is one of the most difficult injuries to recover from, and if it doesn't heal properly, apparently it could require actual surgery and re-rupturing it and starting the whole healing process again. That's what my understanding from American football. If he's back, I would say just because he's familiar with the system, I would start with Gomez. But Gomez has the raw attributes, and I think he'll be with Liverpool for many years to come. Will continue to be a great defender for us. I'm intrigued by seeing Konate and Virgil play together, because one of the things we missed last season was that dominance in the air. We only really got it back when Nat started playing more regularly, and just when you can be demanding in the air defensively, that gives you such a head start, because the Premier League is the Premier League. You're going to have big oafs coming up against you, and they're just going to try and muscle you out. And Virgil he's too big, too strong, too smart, too quick for that. And if Konate can do something similar, that puts us in a great position. And then, Virgil, you can guarantee him five goals a season, more or less. And the idea of two central defenders who have that ability in the air, attacking the box at set pieces. What was Stevie's words? All the best.
Yeah. I think I would my back four would be with Gomez would start. I think it's for Konate to take Gomez's shirt away from him. If Matip's fit, it's Konate's job to get in front of those two. To be fair, because let's be honest, when Matip's fit, Matip's quality. Matip carries the ball out of defence really, really well. And how many times has he dropped the shoulder and gone past two people and found himself on the edge of the box and then thought, "Wow, what do I do with this?" So he's got the ball carrying skills. Much has been made, and rightly so, of Harry Maguire's ability to carry the ball out with the back four. And I will level with everybody that's watching, and everybody that knows me knows I don't rate Harry Maguire, but you can't ignore the fact that he's good at carrying the ball out of defence. That's a massive plus on with regards to him, and with the right partnership, it can work well for him. With regards to ourselves, I think Joe Gomez will partner Van Dijk purely because the Premier League is not League One. It's a very different kettle of fish altogether. It's played at a much different intensity. What we will do, I think, genuinely going forward, we will push the back line further up the pitch again. And I think we've suffered from that this season because the distance between the back line and the front line was often 70 yards. And there's a lot of criticism about the likes of Wijnaldum saying when he got the ball, he didn't know what to do with it. Because if you pick up a ball up, 40 yards away from the front man, by the time you've got that ball out of your feet to make the pass, his options have been closed down. So I think when we can press our team up to the halfway line and we work within the 40 yards between the halfway line and the edge of the box, we become a very different proposition. And I think Gomez is paramount to getting that right. Konate's got a lot of learning to do. Klopp's systems are difficult. They're very intensive, as we know. He asks an awful lot of you, and you have a very, very defined role. So in terms of that, he's got a lot to learn, as has any midfielder that comes in. So I think certainly in the start of the season, I think we'll see when we talk about midfield shortly. I think we'll see a bit more of Curtis Jones maybe because of his athleticism. So in terms of other transfers into the midfield, so let's have a look at what we've got midfield wise. We've been linked with every man and his dog, to be fair, haven't we? From Florian Neuhaus right up to Leon Goretzka, which is never going to happen, let's be honest. Nice to dream, never going to happen. Just cover this one off. Konate is injury prone. Konate doesn't rehabilitate very well from muscular injuries. That could be as much to do with his diet as anything. So let's let the medical team at Liverpool deal with that. It's not a reoccurring injury. He's a big unit, and I've said many, many times, the more you train these guys and the more fitter you make them and the more athletic you make them, the more susceptible they are to breaking because everything's really, really tightly strung, isn't it? So let's hold our counsel on that one, have a look a little bit closer to the season and see where we go. So into midfield, obviously Neuhaus, Sander Berg, Goretzka, which is crazy, and then the latest one is Saul Niguez. So just coming to you guys, Saul is an interesting one for me. 2 years ago, it would be inconceivable that Atleti would even sell him because he was so paramount to their system. What we get if we sign him is a player that he would be our only left-footed midfielder from start, which can only help when you're fizzing balls down the channel to Mane, who's running flat out, to actually be able to shape the ball with the inside of your left boot rather than playing across it with the outside of your right boot, which makes that pass a lot more difficult to achieve. He's used to playing in a system because there's no more defensive system in world football than Atletico, so he would be very, very comfortable with knowing his defined role. My question to you guys is, why is he available? And why is he available at 40 million euros allegedly? And why is it only Liverpool that are being linked with him? Rack, I'll come to you on that one first. I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about that.
So I think Sal's a brilliant player. He hasn't been as integral to Atleti's system in the last, year to 18 months. But he has all the attributes to be a brilliant all-round midfield player. In terms of box to box, he's got defensive discipline. He can pass. He can shoot. He can create. I mean, I love Ginny, but potentially he's a Ginny 2.0 plus. in terms of he can do a bit of everything, and he's just at a very, very high level if he's playing to his maximum potential. Why is he available? I mean, look, Spanish football, just like pretty much all football leagues, even the Premier League, but to a much lesser extent, is a huge financial problems. You just have to look at the situation with Barcelona. I mean, Barcelona, they've signed all these 3 players, but they can't actually register them unless they get 200 million off their wage. I think they got Aguero, and they need to take 200 million off their wage bill before any of those guys can even play for them, which sounds bizarre to me. But I mean, and Atleti have just taken on. I've just bought Rodrigo de Paul, who was brilliant in the Copa America. He's a great player too. But if the thing is, Simeone, he has a very specific system, and maybe Saul wants something new. Maybe he needs a new challenge. Just because he potentially is going to be moving on doesn't necessarily mean we're buying a bad player, or if we might be buying a bad player. So I'm really enthusiastic and interested to see if that goes through. But we'll see. If we don't get him, we don't get him. We'll get somebody else.
Fair comment. Doug, sort of a similar question to you, really. Saul is a very, very well-respected player. Can't get in the Spanish team at the moment, and has been unfortunate to been around when they've had some unbelievable players. To not play because of you're behind the Iniestas and your Silvas of this world is no disgrace in any stretch, is it? So thoughts on whether that happens and what you think?
Well, first of all, Saul Niguez has only been injured 18 times in his career. So, again, he's another genie in the making, because Gini Wijnaldum only missed 11 games for Liverpool. But I think he's a fantastic player, and I think he's got a lot to prove as well. Because the way he's been playing for Atletico, he's obviously fallen out of favour there at Atletico under Simeone, who, look, Atletico Madrid won the league and probably deservedly won the league this season as well. So, and obviously he has previous with Liverpool. He obviously scored the goal in the Wanda Metropolitano to put them 1-0 up against us. So I've been very, very impressed with him, and it kind of excites me as a Liverpool fan. He's only 26, I think, as well. Yeah. So still got his whole career ahead of him. But I think it's a very, very good move if we do get him. But as you say, every Tom, Dick, and Harry's been linked with our midfield. It feels like it anyway. Tielemans, Neuhaus, Basuma, Saul Niguez. There has been a lot of players being linked with our midfield, but Saul would be at the top of my list for sure.
So he would be a choice out of all of the names that have been mentioned.
Okay.
Would he be a choice out of all of the people that have been mentioned, Doug?
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, Rack, what were you going to say, pal?
Just a quick thing also about the money. 40 million at the moment is a lot of money. Like the number of clubs, you can pretty much rule out anybody in France apart from PSG. You can probably rule out most clubs in the Bundesliga and Serie A, apart from maybe Juve, Bayern, and maybe one or two others. So that leaves the Premier League. How many teams in the Premier League have Premier League football? Have Champions League football? Ourselves, Chelsea, Man United, who have been linked, and City. City have got a wealth of midfield options. Chelsea might be looking to strengthen other areas. There's talk of them investing, shitload of money in Haaland potentially and stuff like that. But so if you break it down in those terms, maybe we have a bit of a free run because nobody else has the cash or the willingness, or it could be a number of factors.
Well put. Interesting to listen to. Just left the comment on screen. Yes, he's on big money. We've got one of the highest wage bills in Europe, and the reason why is because it's incentive based. So we might be paying Mo Salah 200 grand a week, which on the grand scheme of things doesn't seem a lot for a player with the numbers that he's returned. But to be fair, if Liverpool play well, his numbers, his salary goes through the roof in terms of, so it's very clever. It's a very crafty way of getting more out of your players. The more you want, the more money you want, go and win us the trophies. I would imagine when they won the Champions League and the Premier League and the other bits and pieces as well, they absolutely filled their boots. So in terms of last season's money, on their P60 would have looked quite poor, wouldn't it, to the year before, when you look at the money they would have earned based on bonuses and incentives. That's a really, really good business model. A lot of what Liverpool do is a really good business model, and it's looked at in admiration by other clubs. So I think if we get him, there will be a view on his salary. I don't think he comes in at 230, because if he does, Mo Salah's got to have that. So is Virgil van Dijk. The top earners in the club will be looking for parity. We're not that club. We're not going to pay that kind of money. I mean, you look at Griezmann's on £595,000 a week after tax. That is absolutely insane. And then you wonder why Barcelona have got the problem that Rat clearly said before. That the issue is that they've got to get rid of £200 million, and the players are asking to go. They're asking to Pjanic just to rip up his contract and go. They're asking for Titi to rip up his contract now, and guess what? Both of them have said, "No, you're all right. Well, hang on, thanks." They are the modern day Winston Bogarts of the football world, So, yes, Rachel is a Manchester United fan, a very knowledgeable one at that. I enjoy talking football with Rachel, so she is.
Just another thing about the wage bill, like. If you're just touching up our basic wages, I think they probably come to about 130, 140, somewhere between 130 and 150 million pounds a season just for basic wages. Our wage bill in the last accounts, which covered not the season just gone, the season before, was 310 million. So that gives you an idea of almost more than 50% is likely to be. Some of it is, other things, national insurance contributions and all that kind of stuff. But over 50% of it potentially is bonus related. So Mo Salah's basic may be 200 grand a week, but he may be actually on in that season 350, something like that a week because of his performance, the team's performance, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
As much as we love them, it is obscene, isn't it? It's crazy amounts of money, but at the end of the day, they're paid to entertain us, and for the most part, throughout the last 3 seasons, they really have. Albeit some of the games last season were entertaining. Who would have ever imagined we'd have gone to Palace and scored 7 goals out of 8 shots? You just never saw that coming, did you? So it was kind of like the sun was out that day, wasn't it? So obvious thing to do after talking about transfers in would be to talk about transfers out. And guys, you've got to put your hands together for this one. There is a strong link that we've had an £11 million bid for Divock Origi. That has got to happen. I'd have taken £11 for him, never mind £11 million. He's an interesting one. He splits our fan base. He will always be iconic because of the goals he scored. But I want to talk to you guys about what you think of him genuinely as a player. So we'll start with you, Rack. It's your decision. Do we keep him? Do we sell him, and why?
Sell him. Take the money. I mean, Michael Edwards is a genius. He's done brilliant things for us. But I think we've had opportunities to sell him in the last 2 summer windows, and we've asked a little bit too much. I think Wolves wanted to pay 20-odd million from a couple of seasons ago. I think it was like 19 million again to Wolves last season, something like that. And look, I love Divock. He's given us some great moments. He'll be, United fans hate to say it, hate to admit it, but basically he's our Ollie. And they'll try and say, "Oh no, Ollie's a much bigger legend," but basically that's the same kind of role he's fulfilled. But look, for his sake, it's better that he plays football. For our sake, it's better we take the money, reinvest where we need it, and 11 million may sound on the cheap side, but like I said, the football landscape at the moment is very, very uncertain financially. Just take the money and reinvest it somewhere else. I trust Edwards and co to spend that money and get the best value out of it as possible.
Yeah, just on this one, Ryan, we need to box this off, mate. Gomez is going nowhere. They're not going to sell Gomez, all right? So stop wishing on the gods, the footballing gods, that they will. That guy will stay at the football club for most of his career. So, my friend, as much as I love you, deal with it, move on, and let's not keep talking about the same thing. Coming to you, Doug, on the same subject, Divock Origi. I mean, tell me what you see. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, I think it's time for Mr. Origi to go. In fact, I actually think we should have probably sold him after the Champions League final. He was on a high. He was very marketable at the time. I just think that the new contract, I think that came at the wrong time. That was obviously based on his performances and the Champions League winning season. The league season, he obviously scored very important goals against Everton as well. So, but last season, anytime he came on the pitch, he just never looked interested. Just never looked interested for me. So, take the money, get him to go to the Mönchengladbach, because I think Mönchengladbach is a very good team in Germany, and hopefully he'll have a better career at it than he did at Wolfsburg anyway. But yeah, I think it's a good move. I think it's a good move because I think what's happening at Mönchengladbach, as far as I'm aware, is that Thuram, I think, is going to be on the move as well. So they're definitely needing a left-sided or a striker role. So I think Origi would definitely fit that mold. But for me, definitely get rid of him.
Well, we completely agree with you. I think 15 million is pushing it. I don't think he's worth 15 million in the current marketplace. I'd take sort of 7.5 or 8 for him. What we need to do is get him off the wage bill. He comes onto the pitch. It doesn't look like he wants to try. Who do you know that goes clean through against the goalkeeper and it's the bar? That's ridiculous that should even be a thing. Look, he's not Suarez. He didn't look like David Luiz and score from the edge of the box with a FIFA-type postage stamp goal against PSG. Those two guys are completely different levels of ability. He just has lost his way. For me, he doesn't look interested. But the reason why the club have kept him is, you show me another footballer who accepts 7 minutes every week as a bit part substitute when a game's gone. They're very difficult to keep everybody happy. So I think that's the reason why he's been in the club as long as he has. But it absolutely is the time to move him on. Absolutely. So here's a Liverpool fan again talking about another club. There must be a way to mute this fella. There really must. And I'll message him afterwards and tell him how much I love him, but he don't know how to talk some nonsense, doesn't he? So the transfers in, guys. Transfers out, sorry. Who do we see moving? Rack, come to you. You're the guy in the hot seat. You've got the opportunity to lighten the load in terms of the wage bill and in terms of moving players on. Who do you think needs a move?
I'm going to come out from the point of view that we need to generate as much as we can so we can reinvest. Therefore, I would sounds a bit of a shame, but I'd sell Phillips. He was brilliant for us at the end of last season, but take the money because I think in the long term he's not going to be of the standard that we require. But he'll leave as a hero, and he did really well last season. In the midfield, I wouldn't lose any of the centre backs. I keep Tsimikas, give him another season as backup to Robbo, see how that goes. I don't know what to do about the right back situation, but obviously Trent is our starter. I'd sell Shaq, get some money for him. Who else is there in midfield? Anybody else any other saleable assets? I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Sell Origi, obviously in attack. Sorry?
Grujic.
Oh yeah, Grujic. It looks like he's. I think that might already be agreed with Porto. Perhaps I've heard that's already been agreed. Sell him. And I don't know who else there is. Who else is there? Anyway, so those three for sure.
I kind of get your point with Phillips, but let's be honest. If things hadn't gone the way they'd gone, you've got to big him up for this, and certainly the other guy, Reece Williams as well. Sorry, who could have ever imagined at the start of the season they'd play in a quarter-final of the Champions League against Real Madrid? That must be insane for them, the pressure those guys played under. On another show, we did a young player of the year, and I gave it to Reece Williams because what a step up that guy's had to have. He's gone from playing under 23s where you're not allowed to tackle because it's just not what they do, to playing in that standard of football with that much pressure. and sort of 60, 70 million pounds riding on in funds in terms of the Champions League. So it was insane that they kind of had to get there. He has a good shout. Harry Wilson's another one that probably needs to move on, but I'm not sure how much you get for him, because I do believe the club have got an unrealistic expectation of his value. He's another one that should go for 10 type of thing. You look at Sancho, who went to Manchester United for an initial 73. There'll be add-ons, but last season they wanted 108. So that tells you everything about the transfer window, doesn't it? So Doug, over to you. Go through the squad, mate. Tell me who you want to move on as part of rebuild or a reshape.
Right, goalkeeper Loris Karius. I think he needs to get out of Liverpool. It's just not worked for him, and he's going through a lot of personal problems as well. Seems he can't stay out of the news, unfortunately, Loris Karius. So for me, I think Loris Karius will go. Defence, I think Reece Williams will get a loan. I think he'll be loaned out to a championship club, possibly. I think Neco Williams is definitely going to go as well. I think he's been touted to move on this window. Also, Grujic, I think that's all but done now. I think 13 million is a great price, especially for the money we paid for him. I think it was something like 8.5 million. I think we got from him, and obviously it was Klopp's first signing as well. I like the Ox, but I just don't think he's going to get many games this season. So I think probably the Ox. Shaqiri, absolutely love Shaqiri, but unfortunately, I think he's going to think his time to the club has come to an end as well. And here's a controversial one: if he actually manages to get injured in pre-season, I'd consider selling Naby Keita.
Yeah. I don't think that's controversial. That would be one of the first players I'd look to move on. And here's why. We paid 50 odd million pound for him, 57, I think it was. He's on about 100 grand a week. So if you factor that into the deal and do that over 3 years, listen, the guy had all the ability in the world for that. He should pick up the ball and drive at people, but he's not playing in the German Bundesliga anymore. He's playing against teams who often sit somebody in front of the back four. They don't do it so much in Germany. Look at the ill discipline Leipzig had when they played against us in the Champions League. We were able to rip them to shreds because from a defensive position point of view, they were terrible. And I think that is indicative of a lot of the German teams. If you look at the English game, you look at Chelsea, they've got people who sit in front of the back four. Manchester United have got McFred. And I know that the Manchester United fans mock their own players, but they are people who occupy spaces you can't play in. As good or bad or indifferent as they are, they're in an area where you can't go because they're physically filling that space. We do it. All the top sides, Manchester City do it with Rodri, who I think actually has been as pivotal to Manchester City as Diaz this season in terms of really nailing that sixth position in front of the back four and adding the stability week in, week out, and those players becoming familiar with each other and gelling as a defensive unit. So I think from that perspective, that's my view with that. I think Shaqiri's quite close to a move to Lazio, isn't he? I think they're just haggling over the final figure. I don't think Shaqiri gets the Liverpool game plan. I don't think he's capable of getting the Liverpool game plan. And you know what? That's not negative for Shaqiri because we love him to bits. He's got ability. He's got a wand of a left foot. But some players are just not geared up to play the way that we would want them to play. So in terms of that, for me, I'd like to see Origi go. I think Phillips will go. I understand why people would want to keep him. I think the decision needs to be his. He's done enough to be asked the question, do you want to stay and play potentially his fourth or fifth choice centre-half, or do you want to go and play elsewhere and be a starting commanding centre-half in your own right? Or do you actually want to move on and go and be? And I think he will move. I think he will. I think he's tailor-made for someone like Burnley, isn't he? At sort of £15 million, if they can cobble together that kind of money from down the back of the settee. But it's one of those. Origi definitely. I do think. I know Rack doesn't agree because I could tell by his face expressions and his shaking his head. I do think we need to cut our losses on Keita. Not enough is said about how he's flopped in the 3 years, and I know he's had fitness issues. Go on.
So I've pretty much come around to that way of thinking about Keita as well. Keita, in my mind's eye, Keita has the potential to become our best central midfielder, but he just hasn't got anywhere near it. And Ox, I think unfortunately he's done. And I would love to give Naby another chance, but I think at some point you need to cut your losses and move on. And he may go away and be a brilliant player somewhere else. And if he does, then it'll be a shame that it didn't happen in Liverpool. But I think at this point he's had enough opportunities. It depends. It also depends if we can get what kind of money we can get for him. If someone comes in and offers, 10 million, then I'd be a bit reluctant. But if we're getting offers of in excess of 20, I think it's worth considering in this market. I don't know whether you guys think that's unrealistic or not, but
no,
that's the point at which I'd consider it.
Just before we carry on, there might be people who've tuned in because it's a Liverpool show that this is the first time you've been on First 11. So please drop onto the YouTube channel, give us a like and give us a subscribe. Please do that and leave us a review on the YouTube channel so we can continue to grow. So to other transfers out, Karius is an interesting one. What would you take for Karius? What's he worth? What would you accept for him? 2.5, 3 million?
I mean, we
only paid 7 for him, didn't we?
Yeah, I think he's probably worth about 1 to 2 million. In all honesty, I think we might make a wee loss there. Two players who I think should go out of the club, and I can't believe they're still here.
We've accumulated quite a few loan fees for him, so I reckon once you factor in all the loan fees and stuff, we might actually turn a bit of a profit or break even. So, and a million here or there, I guess is.
Shea Ojo is still at the club. Don't know how. He's had so many loan deals, so he should be gone. Ben Woodburn, I still think he still thinks he's 16. I think he needs to go. He needs to have a move as well. Harry Wilson, I think he just needs to get out of the club as well. And the one player who seems to still be needing a work permit is Taiwo Awoniyi, who we've had for about since 2010. Hasn't probably played a first team game, and yet he's been getting loaned out completely, and now we've got a work permit for him, so he'd be another one I'd move on.
Right, she confuses all of us, don't worry about it. Absolutely baffles me. I can't understand how that guy's brain works, but I do love him to bits, but he baffles us all. So yeah, that's a really good shout. So we should see, hopefully we see some movement. My only worry is that obviously with it being a COVID market, how many of these players actually do move, because clubs are sitting on their money at the moment, aren't they? If you look at Liverpool lost between £4 and £4.5 million in revenue every home game. Manchester United must have lost 6 because they've got bigger ground and bigger sell-ons on the day. Chelsea will be slightly less than Liverpool, but they've all been hit really, really hard. So I wonder whether the money's there. I think the loan deals might be the way to go. But even so, let's get them off the books and let's get them to pay. It'd be nice if they paid 100% of the wages, wouldn't it? But unfortunately, we don't see that so much anymore, do we? So last topic before I get these raucous bunch who are sending in the comments to send us some questions. This season's expectations, guys. First of all, Rack, give us a top 4.
Liverpool first, Man City second, Chelsea third, United third, Chelsea fourth.
Okay. Don't know if you saw that, but that's the way Ryan sees football, which really worries me. I might have to go and do some form of a phone call for some counselling when we finish, but it's one of those, isn't it? Doug, over to you for your top 4, please, mate.
No particular order. I think it'll be City, Liverpool, United, Chelsea. Maybe not in that order, but I think that's probably going to be the top 4. I don't think Spurs are going to be anywhere near the top 4. Arsenal, no, not a chance. Sorry if there's any Arsenal fans watching. There's just not a chance and hope for you guys. And I would probably say, depending on how they do in the Europa League, Leicester City, that could be a bit pivotal for them. So I'm going to stick with the same top four that was last season.
Okay, so my thoughts would be, I would agree with you, Doug, in terms of the top four. Order is very difficult. So in terms of Liverpool, listen, you can't put too much of price on how much it means to the club to get Van Dijk back. He will lift everybody by 10, 15%. This idea that he might not be the player he was, Chiellini did the same injury at 35, and he was doing overlaps in the 107th minute down the left-hand channel when they were playing totally in England's half on Sunday.
You saw that.
So let's not think for one second that he's suddenly not going to be able to run and he's going to be like, out there with a stick, struggling to get around the pitch. We've all seen the videos. Playing a match is very different to what you do at a training ground. But it was really good that these guys didn't get involved anywhere in the summer, because what the strengthening and conditioning they've done has been really, really intense. So you look at them at the moment, you look at the muscle definition in Van Dijk's legs on the videos he's doing. He's quite close to being as fit as he'd ever be in a pre-season. What he needs is game time on the pitch. So I think the lift Van Dijk gives us, because he's not just the best, for me, not just the best centre half in the world. He's one of the best footballers. Everything looks easy to him. Our transition has gone in terms of when he picked the ball up, those laser-guided balls out to Salah, which the old saying as a football manager years ago would be, the ball moves a lot quicker than a man. Let the ball do the work for you, and that's exactly what those two did together, and it was really good to see. You then push up to the halfway line. So I spoke about this earlier. You then push the midfield into the opposition's half. That's where we turn the screw, and that's where we stop people from playing. I remember when we beat Leicester, when Trent scored the goal and done the Mbappe celebration, the fourth goal. And at the interview at the end of the game, Kasper Schmeichel came on. He was quite salty, and he said, we didn't deserve to win that. And the reason why we didn't deserve to win that is Liverpool make you play the way they want you to play, and you can't stop them. And for me, sort of being someone who watches football and tries to understand the tactical side of it, if you Klopp listening to that must be absolutely magnificent to know that you've got that in your locker. So I fully expect Liverpool to come back and be a lot stronger. And this when we've talked about incentivized pay, they're not going to want another flat year, are they? You know what I mean? They're going to want a few quid on the bonuses, and they have a point to prove. We all say, don't we? Good teams win it, great teams retain it. We're not a great team yet in that regard for me. You look at the Liverpool teams of years gone by, look at the Manchester United teams of years gone by, they were able to go out the next year and retain it. And I didn't see that. And I always wondered whether it was this 30-year millstone around the neck. It was like, it's getting closer, right, we've done it. Arms go up, trophy goes up, and relax. And then suddenly, when you relax, you can't get going again. So I think it was a shock to their system last season. So they'll learn from that, and they'll grow from that, and they'll come back bigger and stronger. So I firmly believe Liverpool will play a massive part in who wins the title. Who it will be, I don't know. If Manchester United get a decent centre-back, and apparently I saw today they'd been given permission to speak personal terms with Varane. I don't know how true that is. That would be a good signing for them, because it's the pace that they're missing in the back four. Also, if they get a decent holding midfielder, the spotlight then drops on the manager, doesn't it, to see if he can get the best out of his team. And we know where there's a shortfall in Ollie's managerial style. So Manchester United will be a threat. Whether they can go all the way, I don't know. I agree with Ryan. I have full belief in Klopp. Why not? Why not have full belief in that guy? He's an absolute motivator, isn't he?
Yeah.
Chelsea will be buoyed by winning the Champions League. An unexpected win in the Champions League, it has to be said, but even so, it was a win. And obviously Manchester City. And if they do what they're going to do with Grealish and Kane, that makes it very difficult for the rest of us, doesn't it? They go and spend 200.
Yeah. So
that makes it a completely different ballpark. But that said, I genuinely believe, and I'm going to get ruined by the people who are listening to this now, when Liverpool are flying, Liverpool's system and the way we play, Manchester City can't deal with it when we play them. And we've seen that time and time again. City have got this idea where they squeeze you to death in terms of they play with three attacking midfielders and they create angles and they get around the back of you. If you're brave against Manchester City, like Leeds were with 10 men, like Chelsea were in the Champions League final, when you play with width and you get around the side of them, you get opportunities. all teams have to be brave against the big clubs because you get something. You have to be brave against Liverpool. You have to be brave against Manchester United. You have to take chances and risks. They're free games. You're not expected to win, so why not have a go? That's the way I see that. So I don't know if you guys agree. Just before we go, we've got 5 minutes or so. I'm going to open it up to the people who are on the chat to send in some questions for us, and we'll see if we get any ones we can respond to. So, guys, if you're out there on the chat, please send us some questions for the last 5 minutes. We are a man light of where we needed to be, so we've kind of finished a little early. So for the next 5 minutes, send us some questions, please. And we
just want Steve, when you mentioned about teams wanting to, Liverpool making teams play how they want to play. I mean, similarly, when we beat Arteta's Arsenal 3-0. He was saying, look, we're trying to press Liverpool, we're trying to get at them, and then all of a sudden Virgil van Dijk pings a 60-yard ball to Mo Salah, and they're out of the press, and they're on our back four, or what's left of their back four, and he just gives you so much. He's comfortable on the ball, and with that comfort, you can then play out from the back and play through the press, or he can ping a 60-yard ball, and then all of a sudden you're out of the press as well, and that's what we really missed throughout the whole of last season. And having him back, assuming he comes back, which I have no doubt, he's an athlete, he's a colossus. When people call him a Rolls Royce, that's a fair description, and that's why I'm really excited for the new season.
So staying with you, Rack, there's a question for you for Valve there. Thoughts on that one?
I mean, I've only seen Doku in the Euros. He looked like an exciting young player. Looked very raw, but I think he's 21 years old or something like that. So that's to be expected. We've had a long-held interest in him. Apparently, I think at 16 years old, he came and visited the club and was shown around, and actually he apparently turned us down because he felt he wasn't ready for the move. So he's obviously someone we've got to keep an eye on. We'll see. He looks great. Maybe he could do with another year or two. He's playing in France, right? I think he's. I don't even know.
Plays for. Does he not play for Rennes?
Rennes. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So
Rennes,
maybe it'd be good to give him another couple of seasons playing first team football there, and then look at it. But yeah, we'll see.
Doug, Devil's Avocados come with a really good question there. Be interesting. I've got my thoughts. Be interesting to see what you think there.
Wow.
That's a tester.
Well, I don't. I know obviously we're Liverpool fans, but I think we have to admit that no one probably comes close to Fergie. 13 Premier League titles, that was great. And then obviously, after Arsene Wenger won the Premier League and consistently got Arsenal into the Champions League. So be careful what you wish for, is what someone famously said as well. I mean, Klopp and Pep are two very, very good managers. It's really difficult, actually. Really, really difficult, because obviously you've got Ranieri, you've obviously got Mancini, you've got Ancelotti. There's been some very, very good managers, for sure. But I just think consistently, Klopp, since he's been at Liverpool, you'd have to probably put him in either. He'll definitely be in the top 10 for sure. Maybe you'd probably argue he's probably top 5, top 6.
I would agree. I think Ferguson is obviously number one through longevity, but not just through longevity, because of what he achieved. And I think even the Manchester United fans would admit, coming across class of '92 is you need a bit of luck to be a successful football manager, and getting a cell of players that come into your club, and it takes a lot of man management. So I'm not trying to downplay it too much, but the reality is no other managers had that. So it was a huge. If you sat and spoke to him over a beer, he would tell you that cost him and saved him so much in terms of not having to go out there and try and build a side, because he had the nucleus of a side with those players. And then he added the likes of Roy Keane to it and other players, and it went stratospheric, didn't it, in terms of their success? So I think Ferguson's one. I think Pep's two. I think Klopp's in the top 5 or 6. I agree. I think Pep has to be in the top 2 purely because look what Manchester City have been doing in the last 5 years, and that exceeds what Wenger achieved when Arsenal were flying for me. Next question. I'm going to answer the next question as I saw it there from Will. Will. There you go. I love this question, Will. Thanks for this. Where do you guys think Fabinho ranks in DMs in world football? For me, he's criminally underrated. Top 2. I totally agree. Well, at some point, you'll have to let me know who's your number 1. As Doug alluded to it earlier on in the pod, that when he came into the 6th role against Real Madrid, the difference in the team was unbelievable. And the confidence he gives people like Thiago. Without Fabinho, Thiago wouldn't be able to control the games. Without Fabinho playing in a double pivot, which was completely alien to us to play last season, and it cost Robertson the ability to press forward, and it meant it stifled our left-hand side. But in terms of that guy, Fabinho is a monster. He's a good footballer too. Do you remember sorry, Rach, but do you remember the ball over the top for Mane against Manchester United? Little sand wedge over the top. He has to do nothing with that ball other than pull it down and score. He's a criminally underrated footballer. So, Will, really, really good question. I can make a case from being number 1. I don't think Casemiro gets near him, if that's who you're thinking is the number 1. I think Jorginho has had a tremendous season for Chelsea. If he carries on next season, he's in the conversation for sure. But those 3 really would be your sort of chief protagonists in terms of his CDMs, who are the best ones. But I personally wouldn't swap Fabinho for anybody else. Okay, let's look, see what other questions we've got before we call it time. So Ryan wants a conversation about Modric. So Ryan wants to know what you guys think of Luka Modric. And I'll tell you why I asked this, because I say this with a really heavy heart, and it's good that I'm sat down because I might break down. Ryan thinks Luka Modric is better than Steven Gerrard. So when you stop laughing, come on, if you can just respond to that, please.
I'll have whatever you're smoking, my friend. Jeez, better than Stevie G. Jesus. Look, Luka Modric has been a fantastic footballer. Probably one of Croatia's best midfielders. He's been very, very good in that Real Madrid team. Did very well when he's over at Spurs as well. But he's not better than Stevie G. No way for me.
No, he's not. He really isn't.
I think with Stevie, he was such a great all-round player. Modric is great, but can you imagine Modric coming in the last 15 minutes of extra time against a fresh Serginho in that top AC Milan side, coming and playing right back and holding him, basically locking him out of the game? Can Modric play on right wing for 2 seasons? When Stevie was putting cross after cross, and I don't necessarily want to compare him to Beckham, but he had that style of cross. Then he played behind Torres, and it was probably the best front 2 in the Premier League in that season and a half when they played together. There were things that Modric can do that Stevie couldn't do as well, of course. But as an overall player, I'd pick Steven Gerrard every day of the week.
Put it this way, Steven Gerrard could win a game on his own. I don't think Luka Modric can.
I think the way I would sum it up is if all of us sat down on a computer and put an 8 out of 10 in every single box for all of the things that professional footballers should do, and I do mean an 8 out of 10, and pressed enter, it would return you Steven Gerrard, because he could tackle, he was powerful, he could run, he could cross, he could shoot. Like you said, Raki played right back for the last 15 minutes of what would have been a very, very energy-sapping match for him, because in the first half, chasing shadows is the hardest thing to do in a football match. It's a lot harder than when you've got the ball. So I think you look at it, and and as Vibe says there, perfectly said. Well done, my friend. If you ask 100 people, 99 would pick Gerrard. I recently had Alan Thompson. Well, not recently. Alan Thompson, the ex-Newcastle and Bolton Celtic player, on a pod, and I asked him, Gerrard, Lampard, or Scholes. You know what his answer was? I trained once in the England camp with Steven Gerrard. It was incredible watching him play. You couldn't get near him. He had everything, his intensity. Everything he did was at like twice the speed and intensity with more power than anybody else. So by the fact I trained with him once, I'm going to pick Gerrard. And I ask all of the people who come onto the pod, because we've spoken to some ex-sports people, they all say the same thing, mate. So absolutely, totally agree with vibes there. Right, guys, that's an hour and 5 minutes, so good time to bring it to an end. Thanks very much, you two, for coming on. This is a weekly thing, so I hope to see you guys frequently on the pod. I'll talk to you about that separately. Just before we go, Rack, where can we find you? Give Rack a follow, guys. He's talks a lot of sense. He doesn't have a YouTube channel. He's a really nice guy. I hope you picked that up from this pod. Rack, tell us where we can find you, pal.
Yeah,
thanks, Will.
Just on Twitter, really. Yeah, I'm not a YouTuber, but yeah, on Twitter at Raxing1. You can usually catch me on a space that's hosted by some of the guys I hang out with on Twitter Spaces, and usually at 1 o'clock in the morning or something crazy like that. Yeah, just out and about. Maybe a football terrace. I'm not usually on a while, and obviously, hopefully, joining you guys again for this show on a Monday.
And Doug, where can we get you, pal?
You can find my Twitter just there, Enrod_1992. You can find me on Instagram at Douglas Horn. You can find me on my YouTube channel, which is the Dugout Football channel, and you can find me on Facebook, Douglas James Horn, as well. Okay,
you can get me at Steve Plunk, or on my own channel, which is at Football Focus, which both you two guys will be invited on very shortly when we look at going to next season. And I'm going to be here weekly. It gives me great pleasure to do this because I get on really well with the guys who run this channel, and I like what they do. So it was really nice to be asked to do this, and hopefully between the three of us and with Connor, we can make this a regular thing. And as the season unfolds in front of us, have a good chat about it. So guys in the chat, you've been amazing. Thank you. We've had good numbers watching all the way through. The comments have been absolutely brilliant. Valve, you do need to drop the Granit Xhaka agenda, mate, because you're more likely to sign for Liverpool than he is, Valve. That's never going to happen, mate. Never in a million years. But I love it. Keep it going. It's been tremendous, guys. I've really, really enjoyed this evening. I was a bit nervous because it's a new channel and I didn't want to sort of cock it up for them. But I think we got away with it. We've had a really good time. So cheers, guys, and thanks for joining the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for the channel and the chat.
Take care, guys.
Take care.